I'm Jess Dakotas.
And I'm Nick Koziel. Welcome to That Sounds Terrifying, the podcast where we share terrifying stories, we share listener experiences, and we visit virtually some of the most haunted places in the United States and the world.
Welcome back to That Sounds Terrifying.
Hey, everybody. Glad to be back. And we have a couple terrifying tales for you. They're all around the Civil War or Civil War themed or war themed in general. But we thought we'd start off with a couple little tales that we have of our own experiences. And Jess, why don't you tell us a little bit about the your little story?
Oh, you want me to start off with this,
Sure, sure.
this
Let's
story?
let's warm everybody up.
Okay. So we're going to be talking, like Nick said, about Civil War and Gettysburg. Um, this is a personal story from my mom, which is funny because she doesn't necessarily believe in ghosts. Um, Due to her religion, ghosts are demons. So, but she's always quick to tell me about a ghost story or encounter or something that she's had in our house or traveling.
Sure.
Um, so this happened when she and my dad went to Gettysburg, I think like about like 6 or 7 years ago. And I was like, oh, have fun, like that place is super haunted, and she's like, yeah, yeah, whatever. Like, I love history. She loves historic everything, and I do too. I probably get that from her. Um, but they went down there, and I was like, where are you staying? Just as a safety thing. And she told me the name of the hotel, and I was like, okay. So I Googled it, and I didn't tell her until she came back what I found. So she got back from the trip, and she called me or I called her. We got in touch, and she said, oh, we had the best time. It was really great. We did do a ghost tour. And I was like, you did a ghost tour? All right. I was like, did they find anything? She's like, no, of course not. No, there was nothing. Um, and then she told me that, like, oh, we went to eat at the restaurant downstairs. She's like, and I felt a little uncomfortable in that like little restaurant. And I was like, oh, what do you mean? She's like, I felt eerie, kind of cold. I didn't like it. I didn't like being in there. I was like, huh, it's okay. So then I said, so I found out that your hotel is haunted. And she was like, oh, Jessica. And she was like, well, actually, now that you say that, she said, so this is kind of weird. Your dad and I went to bed, and there was like a quilt at the end of our bed. Like how they fold a quilt at the end.
Yeah.
And she said that she woke up in the morning every morning, and that quilt hadn't moved at all. Like, it was like right where their feet
Mhm.
were. Usually the quilt will fall off, right?
Right.
And she said it literally, she sat up and had literally looked at it and said, it's like we didn't even sleep in this bed.
Mhm.
Like everything was like flat, nice, clean, nothing. And she's like, It's so weird." She'd get out of the bed, and she said that she'd get out of the bed and the quilt would fall down. She's like, that's strange, because like they would both kick that off. Um, so that's when I told her that I found out in my research that there was actually a housekeeping ghost at that hotel that they stayed at. There was a housekeeping ghost. And she's like, get out. That's not true. I sent her the link to the website and everything. And she's like, oh my God, there's a housekeeping ghost.
Everything was affirmed.
Yeah. So like I guess like that housekeeping ghost is like taking care of people while they're sleeping, or I don't know, cleaning up and being like, don't mess the bed up. I don't know, but I thought that was
Right.
kind of funny.
Yeah, that is a fun story. Um, You know, it made me think of episode 2 when you were talking to your, I think it was your cab driver, and you were saying how much you love when people say, "Oh, I don't believe in ghosts." I don't believe, but there was this one time, which is kind of what your mom just did there.
It's every time,
Yeah.
every time. Yeah, so I love that, but I feel like that again, like, that's, like, almost every time. You can walk up to anybody in a grocery store and be like, "Do you believe in ghosts?"
Mhm.
And they'll either say yes or no, and you'll say, "Do you have any paranormal experiences that happened to you?" And I feel like 8 out of 10 times they're gonna say yes.
Yeah. Yeah, and honestly, that's what I've started to do a little bit more, is ask people, and be that weird guy, in the line going at the grocery store. I haven't done that
At
yet.
the grocery store.
But no, seriously, I am starting to ask more people because we want content for the show, and we wanna
Yeah,
start bringing on guests. We have several guests that we have in mind to bring on, but we also wanna tell stories. So,
mhm.
look, shameless plug, everybody. Let's tell our
Yeah,
stories, you know? That
we
sounds
want your
terrifying at
stories.
Gmail. So, but let's get started with a little bit more Gettysburg action. I did, as a Boy Scout, like I too have a great love for history, and I think that really came from my Scoutmaster. You know, we used to tour. I feel like we've been to every every Civil War battlefield. In fact, when I was doing some of the research around here, I was remembering some of the things that he taught me. And some of the experiences that I had at the time, which were, we were kids and maybe getting scared about freaking ourselves out, and ghost stories around the fire and all that stuff. But there's one particular time that we went to Gettysburg, and we were doing all those things. We had like a song book that we would sing songs around the fire, and then sometimes we tell creepy stories. And this one particular night was like our first night in Gettysburg, and just telling stories about how sometimes the ghosts of Gettysburg are still haunt the battlefield and everything. So we're all like laughing, ah ha ha, yeah, no, nothing, 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 right? So um we go to bed, and I had a really like horrible, horrible dream where I was in the battle. I was shot and killed. I could feel like the bullet ripping through me. Just like it was horrible, and I just chalk it up really bad, big nightmare, right?
Yeah.
So part of the experience was going into the town and going into all the shops which have like Civil War memorabilia and all those things. And I remember buying like little bullets and like a kepi and things like that. And my friend, I think it was my friend Jeff, actually called me over to this picture that was in one of the antique stores. And he's like, dude, that looks just like you. And hanging up on the wall is this picture of this Civil War guy, uh, who looks just like me, this young
Hmm.
kid. And other than that, I just had this chill down my spine, because I'm like that. And the dream that I had and the feeling that I had just felt like I had been there before and all those different things. So maybe it's a past life kind of experience or something. The photo was for sale. It was very expensive. It was like framed in this ornate thing, so I didn't end up getting it. I even tried to convince the scoutmaster to get it for me, and they just didn't do it. I wonder if I go back there if it's still there, but it was just a very creepy and unsettling experience, and I didn't sleep well that entire trip after that. Didn't have the dream again, but didn't sleep well. So that's my sort of Gettysburg
So
experience.
that's creepy. All right, so I have a few things, a few mental notes that I was making while you were telling that story.
Sure.
So are you a vampire?
Well, no, I don't think so. If I am, I don't have any
Okay.
of the cool superpowers.
All right, cool, cool. So, the other thing is what was the scoutmaster's name?
Mike Brown.
Oh, okay. Scoutmaster Mike. Okay.
Mhm.
It's not as fun. I was hoping for
Yeah,
like Scoutmaster Bob or Scoutmaster
right?
Jim or I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Scoutmaster Mike's not as fun. Um and then the other thing is so you were young. You were like what?
I was around the age that you would actually have been in the war. So it was like 14, 15, somewhere around
Okay.
there. Could have been a drummer boy.
Okay.
It was very unclear in the photo what that person was. He looked very young, very much like me.
So
Um,
when sorry.
Go ahead.
So when you were having that dream and you felt the bullet go through, did
Mhm.
you feel yourself die?
I don't I distinctly remember it being the most painful feeling I've ever felt. Like, I've
Okay.
never been shot before, I've never been stabbed, thank God. But I I have had, like, hockey injuries and other things. This, like, memory of that pain is just crazy, how
Mm.
bad it hurt. It was not I got the sense that it was not instant either. It was a very long and slow, painful kind of experience for the dreamy, if in this case, kinda me, you know? But
Yeah.
I woke up after I was shot, but there was, like, this lingering sadness kind of a thing, like, I felt like
Mm.
whatever happened to that guy, it was not a short, like, "Okay, he's dead." It was a very
Mhm.
long thing, so,
Had you been on the battlefield that day?
um, that day, yeah, we spent the whole day, retracing different parts of the actual battles and things like that, so we had a tour, and then we stayed, like we probably stayed somewhere on another battlefield. I'm not exactly sure. I can't remember. It was quite a while ago now,
Hmm.
but we definitely stayed near the battlefield.
Yeah. I guess I'm just wondering if it was like a hanger on, somebody who followed you back and just wanted their death experienced.
Hmm.
Because that I've heard other stories about spirits who just want their death experienced and
Hmm.
then they can move on, sort of thing. Or
Sure.
it could have been a past life. I mean, there's so many theories, right?
Yeah.
So many terrifying theories. Paranormal theories, to me, I guess it's not very terrifying. I think it's kind of cool. But yeah, I guess I just wonder, and we'll never know.
Yeah.
But
I
it
mean,
is a synchronicity that you then saw somebody who looked like you. So
yeah.
what if it was like the spirit of that guy potentially said, "This kid looks like me."
Hmm.
I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, it could be just a dream and then a mere coincidence. And, it was weird because I remember standing there and I have this kepi, this cap, and I was wearing it like in the store. And the there's a symbol, there's like the Calvary metal piece that can go on the kepi. There was nothing on that one, but I bought one that was actually found on the battlefield. Like, so it was an antique. It was the actual thing, whereas the kepi was brand new. But I was wearing that when my friend came over, and I'm like, picture me kind of like walking up to a piece of, the photos back then were put on glass, right? They weren't like picture things, so they were reflective. And then, like, I distinctly remember looking at them, like it was my reflection was coming from the into that picture as well. So like I could see myself with the cap, and that probably made it a little bit more eerie, a little more real.
Mhm.
So, but like I said, it could just be, 15-year-old, 16-year-old kid with an overactive imagination telling scary stories and freaking himself out, but might be more than that. So,
Potentially, yeah. I feel like when you have a dream that never leaves you, it's usually a visitation of some sort
mhm,
or a memory. Those dreams that you just can't kick, or dreams of relatives who have passed or friends who have passed, and like they stay with you.
mhm,
I mean, because most of my dreams, I don't remember them. I have vivid dreams, but I don't remember them.
sure.
But when I have a dream about somebody I loved who passed away, um, or dreams where I died,
Mhm,
um, if if it is a visitation or a memory, then I will remember it.
mhm. See, and I remember most of my dreams very vividly. And
Mm,
like, I can recall them. Like, a lot of people lose that when they wake up in their first minute if they don't like
immediately.
write down. I usually remember it. And what's unsettling to me is when I don't dream or I don't recall the dream, like then I usually
Mm.
I don't know if it's just psychological, but then I have a bad day for some reason. I'm like,
Hmm.
I don't know. So, but anyways, I just thought based on the two stories that I'm gonna now share, that was a cool kind of segue and a cool experience to kind of talk about. Frightening at the time during the actual night where I was feeling what I was feeling, and then sort of really weird, creepy in that store. To this day, I wish that I had just bought that, right? It found a way, lifted it out of the store. I don't know.
Lifted
Yeah,
it with the ornate frame. "Nah,
right.
nothing to see here. It's
Nothing to
under my
see
shirt."
here.
Yeah.
Why is your shirt square, sir? So our first story, is actually about Abraham Lincoln.
Oh, I know him. I
Some
know
people
of
do.
him.
Yeah. So in April of 1865, the nation found itself in the grip of sorrow. The assassination of President Abraham Lincoln had shattered the very soul of America, leaving it in a state of mourning. To pay homage to their fallen leader, a somber and historic event was set in motion. Abraham Lincoln had a funeral train. It took a solemn journey that stretched from the heart of the nation's capital in Washington, D.C., to the small town of Springfield, Illinois, where Lincoln grew up and he was laid to rest. The train's path was not an ordinary one. It carved its way through the collective grief of a grieving nation. Covering almost 1,700 miles, the train's route waved through major cities and towns, inviting millions of Americans to line the tracks and bid farewell to a beloved president. The train was no ordinary locomotive. It was specially designed. Funeral car was named the United States. Draped in black mourning bunting and adorned with an elaborate funeral design, it was the symbol of the nation's grief. At various points during its mournful journey, the funeral train made poignant stops. It was during these stops that Lincoln's casket was placed in public display, and thousands were allowed to pay their last respects. In some locations, elaborate ceremonies were held to honor the fallen leader. As the funeral train moved through the nation, it bore witness to significant historical events. One such moment was the laying of the final spike in the first transcontinental railroad in the Promontory Summit, Utah, on May 10th, 1869. This remarkable milestone occurred during the train's solemn journey, a testament to the nation's determination and unity. The journey reached its poignant conclusion in Springfield, Illinois, where Lincoln had spent his formative years. Here, amidst the rolling plains and prairie winds, the president was laid to rest in Oak Ridge Cemetery on May 1865. Abraham Lincoln's funeral train was a powerful symbol of national mourning and unity during perhaps the most tumultuous time in American history. But perhaps this wasn't the end of the story. In the years that followed, tales began to emerge of a supernatural version of Lincoln's funeral train. It was said that during the twilight hours, the ghostly locomotive would retrace its path through the nation, particularly in New York State. Witnesses recounted eerie sightings of a spectral train. Some described a steam engine slowly chugging along, carrying an otherworldly darkness that obscured the moon and sent chills down the spines of those who beheld it. Others claimed they could peer inside the train, where a crew of skeletal figures manned its ghostly machinery. In the middle of the train, Lincoln's coffin rested, surrounded by ghostly soldiers in blue Union uniforms. The Phantom Train was not confined to a single location. It traversed from 21st Street in New York City all the way up to Albany, following the original path of the old New York Central Railroad. Wherever it passed, the clocks mysteriously lagged 6 minutes behind. In the late 1980s, a man named John, along with a group of educated and level-headed friends, decided to investigate the legend of Lincoln's ghost train in Rome, New York. It was in April, around the anniversary of Lincoln's final journey. They hoped to catch a glimpse of the spectral locomotive that had captured the imaginations of so many. As it gathered by the tracks, the air took on a keen, almost electric quality. They waited in anticipation, but what they saw was a blur, a fleeting glimpse of a ghost train. It was as if it existed on the fringes of reality, an ethereal reminder of a president at a time long past. In the years that follow, on each April 27th, people continue to venture to the railroad line in Albany, New York, hoping to catch a sight of Lincoln's ghost train as it passes.
That's interesting. I've never heard that, which is funny because I mean I've heard how Abraham Lincoln um predicted his own death.
Mhm.
He saw himself in the mirror, that sort of thing, something we could
Yeah,
talk about at a later date, but I've never heard that the
yeah,
train is spectral and it's right in New York, Rome, New York, or
yeah,
Albany, New York. Rome is just an hour outside of Syracuse. That'd be
yeah,
easy to get to.
yeah. Both places. It's there's a bunch of places across the country, that they say this has been. So it's very interesting. And I've heard other things about Abraham Lincoln, being haunting in the White House, in the Lincoln bedroom. There's several stories from prominent politicians, guests of the White House, and
Yeah,
so
yeah, yeah. there are a ton of White House stories about him. Dolly Madison stories too, which is funny. But I did not know that there was a spectral train going through, so that's interesting. Maybe that'd be something fun to do on April 27th.
Yeah, we have to go
Go.
check it out.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
in the Albany area quite a bit, so
yeah, yeah, we are too. So, another interesting kind of fact was, Lincoln's son, Willie, who had passed away during his
yeah,
presidency, also made
yeah.
an appearance in this train. He was actually brought to lay in the family plot. So they removed him from DC or that area and brought him up. So he was also in that funeral procession. Um, so just a lot of different things going on with that president during a very hard time for our country as far as history goes. And then, you know, just a very interesting and somewhat scary story. So,
Yeah, the skeleton crew sounded weird.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
it made me think of, like, Pirates of the Caribbean, um, where there's skeletons on the ship.
yeah. So I pulled this together from a couple different stories of the spectral train, and I'll put all of those links in our show notes so people can kind of go back
Cool.
and see. But there were parts that I took from each story just to kind of make sure that I was getting a good overall view of all the stories. But there's other
Yeah, I love it.
individual experiences that people shared. So,
Cool.
well, keeping with our Civil War theme, I wanted to share a little bit about Custer's last stand.
Hmm.
So, 147 years ago, a daredevil of a soldier, notable for both his bravery and his recklessness, took the biggest gamble of his military career and lost. George Armstrong Custer split his 7th Cavalry into 3 columns and launched an attack against the biggest Native American tribal gathering ever seen, a giant village of some 6 to 8,000 Lakota, Northern Cheyenne, and Arapaho, led by, among others, the legendary warriors Crazy Horse, Sitting Bull, and Gall. Within an hour, Custer and some 220 or thereabout men under his direct command were dead. Another 40 or 50 would be killed in the action at Reno Crossing, so called after the commander at that point on the field, Major Marcus Reno. It was, without a doubt, the greatest victory and costliest of any confederation of Native American tribes ever won. And naturally, it left a remarkable ghostly legacy behind it. Legend has it there was odd phenomenon associated with the Battle of Little Bighorn to Native Americans, the greasy grass, even though the battle itself, and with Custer's wife Elizabeth Bacon Custer, recounted in her memoirs that when the Seventh left for Fort Abraham Lincoln in mid-May 1876, a mirage appeared to split the long column so that nearly half of the regiment seemed to ride off above the trail into the sky and disappear.
Hmm.
Ominous indeed, because nearly half of the regiment would, within 6 weeks, die in battle. The Little Bighorn battlefield became a military cemetery and a national monument a very few years after the battle, and almost immediately gained a reputation as a haunted place. In 1894, a stone house was built for the park's first superintendent, whom the local Crow tribesmen called the Ghost Herder. They believe the superintendent allowed the dead of the Little Bighorn to walk the night hours after the American flag was taken down, then sent them back to their graves with the rising of the flag at sunrise. The stone house itself was said to be haunted. People who would stay in it said that their nights were disturbed by phantom footsteps, banging, loud knocking noises with no apparent origins. Objects that seemed to move from one place to another by their own volition, doorknobs that turned on their own to admit no one, lights that turned themselves on and off, and at least once by a partial apparition that appeared at the foot of a ranger's bed and then vanished through a solid wall. The oddest incident involving the stone house occurred in 1983. A Crow ranger, a park interpreter, and tribal historian named Mardell Plainfeather spotted lights burning on the second floor in the then empty building. A bit spooked, she knew the building's reputation for strange happenings. She called another ranger named Michael to come check the building with her. Michael sent Plainfeather home and went into the building alone, leaving his wife Ruth back at their apartment in a nearby complex. Michael found the building deserted, but the lights on the second floor were on. He turned them off and was leaving the building when his wife came running up screaming in a panic. When she calmed down a little bit, she told him that back in their apartment, the television had gone haywire, the picture had gone to snow, and a voice very definitely said, the second floor of the stone house. Knowing that her husband was at the stone house and afraid something might happen to him, she rushed out and almost collapsed when she found him safe. Well, you might figure a big personality like Custer, whose recklessness and thirst for glory cost him his troops their lives, would remain in this world. Several times it's been reported that Custer's ghost, in the buckskins, red scarf, and white hat he wore on the day of the battle, his famous hair cut unusually short, has been seen walking on Last Stand Hill. Those that have seen him said he's rather confused and apparently he's looking for men, who included, by the way, two of his brothers, a nephew, and a brother in law he lost in battle. Custer's spirit has also been seen at Fort Riley in Kansas, where he and his wife Libby spent several years in the 1860s.
Mm.
So perhaps the oddest sighting of Custer, however, occurred a full 14 years after his death at a most unexpected place, at the site of Wounded Knee Massacre. It has been reported that on December 29th, 1890, both his ghost and that of Sitting Bill, who had been shot and killed 2 weeks earlier, were seen side by side, watching as 153 Sioux were killed by members of the reorganized 7th Cavalry. Those who saw Custer that day said he, like Sitting Bull, seemed to be grieving at the loss of life. Crazy
Wow.
story.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, I don't I guess I don't know much about General Custer other than the famous line of General Custer's last stand.
Mhm.
Um, so I don't know what kind of man he was or anything like that. I should probably go look that look that
Yeah,
up.
yeah.
Yeah, that'd be an interesting read. So when you read that and you were getting ready for the show, what were your thoughts on that? Did they ring like kind of true to you, or were you like, this is a little far-fetched? What were you thinking?
I mean, I think that there's some truth to every story, right? And I think that as years go on, stories like, the big fish story, right? They get bigger and bigger, and like, pretty soon you caught a whale, right? But I think that there's some truth to some of these things that Custer, it was such um a crazy emotional battle, and so many men died so quickly. It
Mhm.
was a massacre that no doubt some energy was left behind, and that people were feeling that, and then when you like place something like a stone house on top of a battlefield or near a battlefield, you're disrupting that energy. And even if it's like, where we've talked about this before, where like it's a movie where ghosts are just kind of walking things out, that would explain something like a spectral going through a wall that's there, right? Because it wasn't there back,
Mhm.
years and years ago.
Yeah. Yeah, if they're
So
just replaying. Yeah. If it's just stuck energy.
So, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm interested to hear again from the fans and saying, like this is a little bit of a history lesson, right? But and I love history, but I think a lot of ghost stories come from history, and they morph over time, and people experience different things, and you have people that go out to these locations. Like I'm sure we're going to visit some places ourselves to try to tell a story on site, and maybe experiencing something ourselves, right? Um, so I guess my initial experience was I, in a way, was reliving some of like, my passion for history, but also some of my childhood, because most of these, I wasn't at Custer's Last Stand, but most of the sites that I went to, I was overwhelmed with emotion, you know,
Yeah.
knowing that
Yeah.
so many people have passed.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. The energy stays there, right?
right.
Like, I love walking into old houses for that reason.
Hmm.
Just that so much history has taken place here. So many people lived and died in that place. They were young here, they were old here.
Hmm.
Like that same kind of energy, so much took place in this building, in this spot. And I guess you could technically argue that for a lot of places, even just like land,
Hmm.
but yeah, I don't know. But you mentioned something about how they put a stone house on that
Hmm.
property. And stone, just like, rocks in general,
Hmm.
crystals and things like that, are known to hold energy. Um, so especially limestone is known to kind of radiate and hold on to keep energy.
Hmm.
And I'm really big into crystals, big shock.
Yeah.
um yeah, surprise. So I feel like different stones can do different things, just like people like with different medicines do different things. Different herbs do different things.
Hmm.
To me, different stones represent different things.
Right.
Um, and so the fact that they put a big stone house on such a energy filled area to me is like almost like inviting the energy to stay there and
Hmm.
maybe replay over time.
Hmm. Or strengthen it some
Just
way, right?
yeah, or amplify it. I mean,
Yeah.
if there's quartz somewhere, quartz amplifies things, so
Hmm.
that could be it. um you know I, it's yeah, I think that there's something to that scientifically that
Yeah.
can be proven as well. Just, I mean, they use quartz in watches, they use quartz in um you know computer chips, things like
Yeah.
that. So
Yeah. And
it's
limestone.
because they hold energy. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, in limestone, you bring up a pretty good point. I know, like, especially throughout history, that's a pretty easily carvable substance of stone, right? But it also, I think, was used a lot, like when they had the designed those huge sanitariums, the big building blocks ones. I'm pretty sure that was limestone. So yeah, imagine all that energy getting, kind of trapped
Yeah.
or pulled in or, you know, amplified. Maybe there's some quartz in there too.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, who knows? But
Yeah.
I mean, I just, as an example,
Yeah.
in case any listeners are like, "You're a kook," I am, but but there have been scientific studies on different types of rocks
Yeah.
and their energetic, I don't want to say powers, but their energetic like factors,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah. Well, I often fear about what listeners think about me, especially the ones that know me now. Like, you're calling yourself a kook, but I'm like, oh yeah, he's crazy.
I really don't. I
Yeah.
don't care. Like
Oh,
I am who I am.
right.
Like
Right.
I like paranormal stuff. I like spooky stuff. It's a passion of mine, and so I'm
Sure.
a little bit weird. I'm also compassionate, kind. I'm not going to be a jerk.
No. Well,
That's important.
yeah.
So I can be kooky, weird. Some of the most interesting people I've ever met have been considered weird.
Mhm.
Oh, they're weird. Okay. So, what's wrong with
Well,
weird? That's
it's
interesting, right? Like,
yeah.
I don't know,
No.
we do improv. People shudder when they think of improv.
Yeah.
Shudder. They can't do it. They're terrified, and to watch improv is embarrassing for them because they get secondhand embarrassment. Um, but I
Yeah.
think that the most interesting, most fun people are a little kooky. So what?
Yeah. Well, I'm glad that you're coming on this ride with me because, like, and, we can be kooky together.
Yeah,
So at
sounds
least
good.
at least the two of us will have a great conversation. Do
Yeah.
you want to hear one more? I got a short one.
I don't. No, I really don't.
All right.
Yes.
Well,
Yeah.
thank you, everybody, and we'll
It was a
see
good
you
show.
next time.
Yeah, go ahead. Okay.
This story is called The Train at Marshall Pass. Sometimes the rails themselves have become haunted. Some by trains going down rails that no longer exist. Some by railmen who only can be seen helping other fellow railmen, and some by ghostly trains that chase real trains, giving the engineers a scare. Most famous of these has to be the Phantom Train of Marshall Pass. Marshall Pass is a continental divide between Poncha Pass and the town of Sargents, and used as the narrow gauge rail between Salida and Gunnison from 1881 to 1955. Nelson Edwards was an engineer who was not new to the pass. On the night of the ghost train chased the train he was driving. This trip, he had been warned that there were problems with the track, so there was extra wary. Just as the train was approaching its descent, Edwards got a signal to stop. Assuming it was from the conductor, he called to him. The conductor denied it. In fact, the conductor said they should increase speed, if anything, because he had seen on the tracks behind them another train. Edwards could now hear the other train's whistle and put on the speed, pushing it up the slope. Coming down the other side of the pass, Edward saw the train behind was bigger, a freight train, and he knew that if the other train caught up, it would mean disaster. On a tight curve, Edwards and his conductor could see the face of the engineer behind, and they were appalled that the other engineer was laughing at them. The chase wasn't over. Ahead, Edwards saw a warning light signaling him to stop the train. And here is where the story changes, depending on sources. According to the story in the Rocket Mountie News, published in May of 1889, Edwards pulled the brake, fearing the worst, and rode through a crowd of 10 to 12 ghostly men that were fixing the track. And after Edwards' train had gotten through, the freight train had hit the broken track and went over the side of a cliff, vanishing as it did. The other account has the famed train lifting over Edward's train and going to the side as the crew watch. Both accounts hold the same, however, in the message Edwards found on the cab window the next morning, etched in the window. Years ago, a freight train was wrecked, and as you saw, now you see it. We will never make another run. The engine was not under control, and 4 men were killed. If you run on this road again, you will be killed. Edwards took the message to heart. He left his train in Green River, Utah, quit working for the Rio Grande, and went back to Denver via the Union Pacific.
Okay. So, huh. So, so chased him down, showed him
Yep.
how he died, and then he was like, he wrote an epitaph
Yeah.
like,
Yeah.
on the window,
Yeah.
and was like, if you come back here, you'll be
This will
killed.
be your fate too. Yeah. Don't and scared him out of his job. So
I mean, who took over? Did they die?
I
I
don't know.
I
Maybe that.
gotta I now
Well,
I gotta
and I'm
research
not
it.
exactly sure. Like I don't know exactly when it didn't say, and I should have looked up when his run was. Maybe this was
Mhm.
1955 when the train stopped going down there, and they're like, "Hey, screw this, we're not doing this anymore," right?
Yeah, yeah. Oof. I don't know what that would. Um, I guess maybe that was a good warning. Like maybe he really was gonna die, and so they were like, "Hey, this is
Sure.
how we get your attention. And here's a really good story." Or maybe the guy like really just wanted to quit his job, and so he thought up like this crazy story, like
Yeah,
this, you know, fantastical story, and I don't know. Then he he was like, "And I quit,
and I quit. I'm out.
and I have booze on me at all times."
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah, it's
uh,
crazy. I mean, it kind of reminds me of there was a time again, going scouting. I remember being told a story around a campfire, and we probably were on another Civil War battle. We saw a lot of Civil War battlefields, and there was a story about a ghost spectral train in the area that just was haunting the tracks and whatnot. And I remember a few of us, like when we went to sleep, like we weren't asleep yet, but we heard a train in the middle of the night. And it's not a new train. There's a distinct difference between a steam whistle or, a coal
mhm,
whistle than there is,
yeah,
today's trains. So unless somebody was like on some really like 2 a.m. like reenactment,
yeah,
we really felt like we heard that train. I have several people that heard it. But then on the other hand, who knows? Like maybe we have a crazy scoutmaster who wants to scare the heck out of his scouts and was blowing a train horn in the woods. I don't know. So, but
yeah,
I hope you like these stories, a little bit of history lesson there too. And I really enjoyed hearing
yeah.
a bit about your mom's Gettysburg experience.
Yeah, the
So
housekeeping. I wish that I had a housekeeping ghost that
yeah,
would like come into like just clean the house and like, all right, see you later. I'm out.
if you think about it, that's probably among the top 10 best ghosts to have, right?
Yeah. Yeah. If you're gonna be here and you're not gonna pay anything, then at least empty my dishwasher or make my bed or make my kids' beds or help
Yeah.
clean up their toys that are everywhere. I don't know.
I don't know. Our luck,
Um,
we probably get the ghost that makes the mess, that opens up all
makes
the
yeah,
cabinet. Yeah, it
the
stacks the
poltergeist.
dishes
Yeah.
and then puts a chair on top of it. Like,
Yeah.
gonna break my
You're
grandmother's
so
dishes.
messy, ghost.
Right.
Why did I get the messy ghost? It's the
Well,
teenager ghost.
yeah. Well, I guess Remember the next time you hear a train whistle blow, it may not be your train, but perhaps it's an old locomotive that is still traveling to its destination. Or maybe you need to bow your head and say a little prayer to honor President Lincoln. But I'd stay vigilant and our fellow terror seekers until the next terrifying tale.
See ya.